I know what you're thinking, and no, I'm not talking about sex. I'm talking about the silent space between two people who once couldn't sleep unless they were tangled in each other's arms. Now I roll over, and it's like we're strangers sharing a bed. I don't like sleeping with my husband, and if you've ever felt that distance in your soul, this is for you. When I say I don't like sleeping with my husband, people instantly assume I'm talking about sex. But let me be clear, this isn't about sex. This is about the space, the silence, the disconnection that has quietly crept into the most sacred space of our marriage, the bed. You see, the bed is not the problem. It's just the symptom. The bed is where all the day's emotions show up with no pretending. It's where we're supposed to rest, where we should feel safest. But when that safety has been replaced with tension, silence, or worse, indifference, the bed becomes a battleground of unspoken pain. Let me give you an image. Imagine two people lying on opposite sides of a king-size bed. Their bodies are still, their backs turned. One stares at the ceiling, the other scrolls through their phone. There's no fight, no yelling, no drama, just the suffocating sound of nothing. That's emotional divorce. That's when the marriage is still legally intact, but the intimacy has long packed its bags. We didn't get there overnight. Nobody does. The distance starts small. One night I come to bed and he's already asleep. I don't want to wake him, so I lie quietly. Another night he walks in late and I pretend to be asleep because I'm annoyed he's late again. Another week goes by and we've stopped even saying goodnight. No kiss, no touch, just silence. And before I know it, we've created a ritual of separation inside a space that was built for connection. It didn't start in the bedroom. It started at dinner when we stopped asking about each other's day. It started when I vented about work and he responded with a blank nod. It started when I needed emotional support and he offered logic instead of presence. And to be fair, it started when he needed kindness and I gave him sarcasm. It started when we stopped really seeing each other, and when the emotional thread breaks, the physical thread unravels shortly after. Here's the thing nobody tells you. People don't fall out of love. They fall out of connection. They fall out of the daily decisions to lean in when it would be easier to check out. They fall out of the habit of caring, of noticing, of staying curious about one another. And by the time they notice it, the bed feels cold. Not because the sheets aren't warm, but because the hearts lying in them have gone numb. We all carry invisible weights. Work stress, parenting fatigue, family pressure, body image struggles, financial fear. And somewhere along the way, those weights begin to shape how we show up in our relationships. The husband who once couldn't fall asleep without holding me now falls asleep facing the other way. Why? Because life got loud and we stopped listening to each other's whispers. It's easy to look at the bed and say, this is where it's broken. But the truth is, that's just where it reveals itself. Like when a dam leaks, it's not the crack that caused the flood. It's the pressure that's been building for months behind it. We live in a culture that tells us to grind, hustle, perform, achieve, but nobody teaches us how to rest in the arms of another human soul. Nobody teaches us that intimacy isn't just something that happens at night. It's something we build all day long. It's the small choices we make to hold hands in the car, to hug just a little longer, to ask, how are you really doing? And stay present long enough to hear the answer. One day, I remember walking past our bed and thinking, that used to be my safe place. Now it feels like a courtroom, a cold station, a place I brace myself before I enter. And it wasn't because we stopped loving each other. It was because we stopped prioritizing what love needs to survive. Intentionality, gentleness, presence. If you've ever felt like the person next to you is miles away, even though your feet are touching, you know what I'm talking about. That moment when physical closeness feels like emotional isolation, it's gutting. And we hide it from the world. We post the vacation photos. We smile at church. We laugh at dinner parties. But when the lights go out, the truth shows up. I don't like sleeping with my husband because I don't recognize the version of us that now exists. And still, every night, I lie there hoping he'll roll over, that he'll notice the sadness in my breathing, that he'll reach out, not just for my body, but for me. And sometimes I wonder if he's thinking the same thing. If he's lying there too, wondering what happened to the couple that used to whisper jokes in the dark and fall asleep, belly laughing at nothing. The bed isn't where it ends, it's where it reveals. It reveals what we've been avoiding, denying, suppressing. It shows us the emotional bankruptcy we've created by withdrawing too much and depositing too little. And the truth is, if the bed feels empty, the relationship probably has been for a while. We don't talk anymore. We transfer information. And if that sentence punches you in the gut, you're not alone. There was a time when we talked for hours. I mean, really talked. About dreams, about fears, about the songs we loved, and the childhood memories that still made us cry. I remember laughing so hard at 2 a.m. we'd wake up the neighbors. We used to be curious about each other, interested, engaged. Now it's just logistics. Did you pick up the groceries? Don't forget the plumber's coming tomorrow. The kids have practice at 6. That's not communication. That's a transaction. That's data being passed between two people who used to be lovers and are now operating more like business partners running the household. At some point, we started confusing talking with connecting, but there's a world of difference between speaking and being heard, between noise and presence. And I started to realize we weren't having conversations anymore. We were just managing a schedule. Here's what happens. Life gets loud. You've got work deadlines, kids with endless needs, financial pressure, social media constantly buzzing, and you think, I'll talk to them later. Tonight, maybe tomorrow. But then later becomes never, and silence becomes the default. Not angry silence, not dramatic silence, just the quiet resignation of two people who stopped making time to truly see each other. It hit me one night when I walked into the kitchen, saw him sitting at the counter scrolling his phone, and I said, hey, and he replied, hey, without even looking up. That was it. A greeting with no heartbeat behind it. And I just stood there thinking, is this it? Is this who we are now? You start to notice the difference. You feel it. You can tell when someone is listening just to respond and when they're listening to understand. I used to tell him everything. Now I edit my thoughts before I speak because I don't want to be met with indifference or a distracted And maybe he feels the same. Maybe we both stopped sharing because it became safer to keep our feelings to ourselves than risk feeling invisible. It's like we became fluent in surface talk, we mastered it. But deep talk, vulnerable talk, that got buried under years of routine and resentment, and yet our souls are starving for depth. Let me tell you something. Every powerful relationship, every love that lasts, depends on one sacred skill. Not sex, not money, not even common interests. It's communication. Real, raw, vulnerable, sit down and look me in the eyes kind of communication. I remember hearing someone say, the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. And that stuck with me because indifference is what kills connection. It's not the yelling, it's the shrugging. It's when I say I had a hard day and he says, oh, and keeps scrolling. That's when the erosion begins. We stopped checking in. We stopped asking the deeper questions. How's your heart? What's been weighing on you lately? What are you afraid of right now? When was the last time you asked those questions to your partner? When was the last time you were asked? We became so task-oriented, we forgot that our partner isn't just our co-parent, our co-manner, our cohabitant. They're a whole world. They're a storm of feelings and stories and needs just waiting to be known again. You know what else I noticed? We talk more to strangers online than we do to the person sleeping next to us. We post our thoughts, our struggles, our food, our wins, hoping someone out there will validate us. Meanwhile, our partner hasn't heard a genuine emotion from us in days, weeks, months. It's heartbreaking, isn't it? We say, I don't have time, but you had time when you were dating. You stayed up late, lost sleep, rearranged your schedule just to talk. Now we say, we're too tired. But real talk, we're not too tired. We're just no longer prioritizing connection. And here's the most dangerous part. We get used to it. We normalize the distance. We adapt to the silence. And that's how marriages end. Not with a bang, but with a quiet, daily neglect. I once sat in the car for 10 minutes after getting home from work, just staring at the front door because I didn't know how to re-enter my own house. Not because I was afraid, but because I knew there would be no real conversation inside. Just do lists, just noise. And that's when it hit me. This isn't how it's supposed to be. We were made for connection. Real, soul-shaking, heart-awakening connection. The kind where you can exhale into someone's arms and say, here's all the mess I'm carrying, and not feel judged or dismissed. That kind of connection starts with talking. Not just speaking, but truly sharing from the gut, from the heart. But that kind of talk requires courage. It means saying, hey, I feel disconnected from you, and I don't want to live like roommates anymore. It means pushing past the awkward, sitting in the discomfort, not rushing to solve, but choosing to simply listen. The truth is, we don't lose each other all at once. We lose each other in the small moments. We choose silence over honesty, convenience over curiosity, comfort over courage. And the most mind-blowing part of all this, most people don't even realize they're doing it. They think their relationship is fine until one day someone finally breaks down and says, I'm lonely, and I've been lonely for a long time, even with you right here. Stress has become the third person in our bed. We don't talk about it often, but we feel it. Every night when we lie down, there's this invisible weight pressing on both of us. And no, it's not the blankets or the air conditioning. It's something much heavier. It's the bills we haven't paid yet. It's the boss who keeps calling after hours. It's the look on the kid's face when we had to say no to something. Again, it's the ache in our chest from carrying a life that keeps moving faster than we can breathe. That's the stress. That's the third presence in our bed. I didn't marry stress. I married a man I loved, a man who made me laugh until my stomach hurt, who'd kiss my forehead before falling asleep. But over time, I watched the light in his eyes slowly dim, not because he stopped loving me, but because the world kept piling more and more on his shoulders, and he didn't know how to put it down. And me, I did the same. I took on more than I could handle. I became the fixer, the planner, the scheduler, the parent, the counselor, the machine that kept it all together. But the more I did, the less room I had in my heart for softness, for stillness, for him. We used to talk before bed. Now we scroll. We used to hold each other. Now we both sleep on our sides, facing away, like we're protecting ourselves from a world that never lets us rest. I lie there sometimes and think, how did we go from being in love to being in survival mode? Stress isn't just a feeling, it's an invader. It creeps into your mind, your muscles, your tone of voice. It wraps itself around your marriage like a vine, squeezing out all the light, all the space for laughter and intimacy. You don't even notice it at first. It just starts with snapping over small things. Dirty dishes, missed texts, unpaid parking tickets. But those aren't the problem. They're just the trigger. The real issue is we're exhausted. We are two people trying to outrun our own lives. And when we finally fall into bed, there's nothing left for each other. Just heavy breathing, clenched jaws, and restless minds that never stop spinning. You know what stress does to love? It doesn't just drown it. It hardens it. It turns affection into avoidance. It replaces romance with routine. It takes two people who once couldn't keep their hands off each other and turns them into strangers sharing space. Intimacy becomes a chore. Kindness becomes rare. And silence becomes easier than saying, I'm overwhelmed and I don't know what to do. One night, I was lying next to him and I looked over and realized I didn't even know what he was thinking anymore. I didn't know what was keeping him up at night. I used to know every corner of his mind. But now, we both fall asleep carrying separate storms inside us, and we never talk about them. Stress doesn't just hurt marriages, it isolates people in the very place they're supposed to feel safe. And the sad part is, we think this is normal. We think this is just what grown-up life looks like. But love was never meant to be this lonely. Love isn't supposed to feel like we're roommates managing a crisis center. Love is supposed to feel like a place we return to, not escape from. I started asking myself, what if the problem isn't us? What if the problem is what we've allowed into our space? We've let stress come into our bed, sit on the edge, and whisper all night. And instead of fighting it, we've adapted to it. We've made room for it, even while pushing each other further away. There was a night I came to bed late after finishing laundry and checking work emails. I crawled in quietly, not wanting to wake him, but he was awake, just lying there staring at the ceiling. I whispered, "Hey, You okay? And for a moment, there was this silence. Not a cold one, an exhausted one. And he said, I'm tired, babe. Not just physically. I'm tired in my bones. I knew exactly what he meant, because I was too. That's when it hit me. We're not mad at each other. We're not falling out of love. We're just maxed out, worn down. And when you're running on empty, you have nothing left to give, not even to the person you love most. So many of us are carrying the kind of stress that steals our softness. We're showing up to our marriages with gritted teeth instead of open hearts. And the danger is, the longer we live in that mode, the easier it is to normalize distance. We say it's just a phase, but weeks turn into months, months turn into years, and suddenly the person you once whispered dreams with is just someone you share a Wi-Fi password with. I don't want that. I don't want to let stress rob us of the joy we worked so hard to build. I want to crawl back into bed, not with anxiety, but with comfort, with connection. I want to reach for his hand without hesitation. I want to replace the sighs with laughter, the scrolling with storytelling, the numbness with presence. But that won't happen by accident. It takes awareness. It takes stepping back and asking, what are we letting into our relationship? What are we prioritizing above each other? Because here's the truth. Stress will always try to take the front seat. It will always demand your attention, but you get to choose who gets your heart. Resentment is the silent killer. It doesn't come in with fireworks or shouting matches. It doesn't kick down the door and announce its arrival. No, resentment is quieter than that, smarter. It slips in through the cracks, through the unsaid, the overlooked, the unresolved. And before you know it, it's living in your home, sleeping in your bed, eating at your table. It starts small. Maybe it's the way he forgot to say thank you for dinner. Again. Maybe it's how she always points out what you didn't do instead of acknowledging what you did. It's the way you feel invisible after a long day of giving everything to work, the kids, the house, and still not feeling seen. You tell yourself, it's not a big deal, but then it happens again and again and again until one day, you're not just hurt, you're bitter. You don't say it out loud, but it's there. Resentment doesn't scream, it simmers. It's that quiet burning under the surface that makes you roll your eyes when they speak, that makes you turn away when they reach for you, that makes you replay old conversations in your mind, rewriting what you should have said. I remember sitting on the couch one night, watching him scroll on his phone while I folded laundry for the third time that week. And I thought, you see me doing this. Why won't you help? Why won't you care? But I didn't say it. I just folded silently, smiling on the outside, boiling on the inside. And the worst part, he had no idea. He probably thought we were fine. That moment, that silence, it became a brick. And I added it to the invisible wall I was building between us. That's how resentment works. It doesn't show up in dramatic ways. It shows up in the way you stop trying, the way you stop reaching out, the way you stop hoping they'll change. You start to think, why bother? You go to bed angry, not because of one fight, but because of 1,000 tiny moments that were never resolved. And here's the truth. No one likes to admit, most resentment grows in the spaces where communication dies. We assume they should just know. We think if I have to tell them, it doesn't count. But the truth is, no one is a mind reader. And expecting your partner to magically understand what you need without ever saying it out loud, that's a recipe for heartbreak. You start telling yourself stories. He doesn't care about me. She doesn't appreciate me. They don't love me like they used to. And you believe those stories, not because they're true, but because you've been silently stacking evidence for years without ever confronting the real issue. Resentment turns partners into enemies without a single argument. It poisons the good memories. It makes you forget the laughter, the kindness, the nights you held each other and whispered, I'm never leaving. Now all you can remember is what they didn't do, what they didn't say, what they didn't become. And you know what makes resentment so dangerous? It feels righteous. It makes you feel like the victim, like you're the one who's always given, always sacrificing, always doing more. And maybe you are. But living in that space where you hold every wrong like a medal doesn't heal you, it hardens you. I've met women who carry 10 years of silent pain, men who've been dying for one honest conversation but never got the chance. They stay married, they raise kids, they pay bills, but there's no intimacy left, no emotional safety, just two people coexisting, both secretly blaming the other for their unhappiness. And yet, they never say a word. Why? Because vulnerability feels harder than resentment. Saying I'm hurt feels weaker than saying nothing. But holding on to resentment is like drinking poison and hoping the other person suffers. It doesn't heal you. It slowly kills everything beautiful between you. You want real intimacy, real connection, then you have to do the brave thing. You have to speak. Not with rage, not with sarcasm, with truth, with raw, messy honesty. I feel alone. I feel unappreciated. I miss us. Those are the words that start the healing. Not blame, not accusations, just the truth, spoken with the desire to rebuild, not destroy. Because sometimes the one you're resenting is the one who's quietly resenting you too. They're also feeling unseen, unheard. They're just as tired, just as confused. And both of you are trapped in a cycle of silence, hoping the other makes the first move. But what if you made the first move? What if you stopped pretending and said, this isn't working, I'm angry, and I don't want to be. Help me understand you again. Help me feel close to you again. That takes courage. That takes humility, but that's where love starts to breathe again. I've seen marriages that were dry as dust come back to life with one vulnerable conversation. I've seen couples rediscover each other, not by solving everything overnight, but by finally seeing each other again. And it all starts with naming what we're too afraid to admit. I've been holding resentment and I don't want to anymore. The strongest relationships aren't built on perfection, they're built on repair. On the willingness to pause, to confront, to feel uncomfortable for the sake of something better. Resentment will always invite you to stay silent. But love, real love, asks you to speak. We forgot that intimacy is built, not given. We walk into marriage thinking that love, closeness, and passion are part of the package, like furniture that comes pre-assembled. But they're not. They're not just handed to you at the altar. Intimacy isn't some magical energy that stays alive just because you once said, I do. Intimacy has to be built brick by brick, word by word, day by day. The problem is, life is loud. Life is busy. Kids are hungry. Jobs are demanding. Laundry never ends, and bills don't pay themselves. And in the middle of all that chaos, we forget the quiet work of love. We forget the touches, the questions, the shared glances across the room. We forget that the deepest connection doesn't happen in grand moments. It happens in the small, consistent ones. There was a time when I couldn't wait to talk to him, when hearing about his day felt like the most important part of mine. But somewhere along the way, we got efficient. We became masters of coordination. What time's the appointment? Who's picking up the kids? Did you pay the light bill? But we stopped being curious about each other. And curiosity is the heartbeat of intimacy. I remember sitting across the dinner table, watching him eat, and thinking, when was the last time I asked him how he was? Really was. Not just how was your day, but what's been on your heart lately? That kind of question, the kind that cracks people open gently and says, I still want to know you. Intimacy doesn't just fall from the sky. You build it in the middle of ordinary life. You build it in the way you listen without interrupting. You build it in the way you hug a little longer, kiss a little deeper, choose softness over sarcasm when you're frustrated. You build it in the way you put your phone down and give someone your undivided attention, even if it's just for 5 minutes. And when you stop building it, it stops growing. It's like a garden. If you don't water it, don't be surprised when it dries up. Intimacy dies not from one big failure, but from 1,000 missed opportunities to connect. I think a lot of people confuse intimacy with sex. And yes, sex is one way we connect, but it's not the foundation. Intimacy is when you feel emotionally safe, is when you can say, I'm scared, or I feel insecure today, and the other person doesn't flinch. Intimacy is when someone sees you in all your mess and doesn't walk away. That doesn't come from physical touch. It comes from emotional effort. So many couples are struggling because they're trying to have passion without connection. They want the fire without feeding the flame. But you can't microwave closeness. You can't manufacture vulnerability on demand. You build it slowly over time. I remember a moment years into our marriage when I broke down in the kitchen. I was overwhelmed, burned out. I felt like I was failing at everything. And I said, I don't even know who I am anymore. And he didn't fix it. He didn't rush to make it better. He just held me, let me cry, rubbed my back and whispered, you don't have to carry it alone. That was intimacy. That was deeper than any bedroom moment. Because in that second, I knew I was seen, I was safe, I was still his person. And you don't get to that kind of moment without doing the work. The daily check-ins, the random texts that say, I'm thinking of you, the hand on the back as they walk by, the hard conversations when things get tense. You build it when you laugh together about stupid things or cry together during hard ones. You build it by showing up, not just physically, but emotionally. Somewhere along the line, we stopped showing up like that. We thought marriage would take care of itself. We thought love would just sustain itself. But love doesn't run on autopilot. It needs to be refueled. You want real intimacy? Then you have to be intentional. You have to look up from the grind and say, hey, I miss you. Let's fix this. And not just once, but often. Because life will always try to pull you apart. It will always give you a reason to skip the deep talk, avoid the emotional connection, put off the date night. But you have to fight for closeness. You have to be builders, architects of love, not just co-managers of a home, not just task runners, but soul connectors, people who choose again and again to go beyond the surface. You don't find intimacy. You create it. You shape it every time you choose compassion over criticism. You carve it into your days by being fully present even when you're tired. You deepen it every time you say, tell me more, instead of you're overreacting. It's not easy, but neither is feeling distant from the person you once felt closest to. And one of the greatest tragedies in life is being emotionally starved in the presence of the person you love most, because you didn't nurture what you thought would always be there. We forgot that intimacy is a craft, a practice, a lifestyle. And if you want to feel close again, if you want to feel known, wanted, chosen again, you've got to roll up your sleeves and do the work. It's not about blame, it's about ownership. That simple shift in mindset can change everything in a relationship. Because the moment you stop pointing fingers and start looking in the mirror, you step into your real power. Blame is easy. Blame feels good. It gives you a temporary high. He never listens. She's always nagging. They don't understand me. But ownership, that takes maturity. That takes courage. And more than anything, that takes love. When you blame, you hand your power to the other person. You're saying, I feel this way because of what you did, and I won't be okay until you change. Do you hear how powerless that is? It means your peace depends on someone else's behavior. But when you take ownership, the entire dynamic shifts. You start saying things like, I'm feeling disconnected. What can I do to move closer? Or, I know I've shut down lately. And you start taking responsibility, not for everything that went wrong, but for how you respond to what went wrong. I remember standing in the hallway one night, arms crossed, frustrated beyond words. The dishes weren't done, the kids were melting down, and I was about to explode. And then it hit me. I had a choice. I could storm in and light him up with all the things he wasn't doing. Or I could pause and ask myself, what am I bringing into this moment? I realized I hadn't said clearly what I needed. I had assumed he knew. I had built a case in my head, but never actually told him I was overwhelmed. That's not on him, that's on me. Ownership doesn't mean letting someone off the hook. It means taking back your role in the story. It's the difference between reacting and responding, between controlling the moment and letting the moment control you. Let me tell you, blame will never build a connection. It will build walls, thick ones. Because every time you blame your partner, you push them further away. You become the prosecutor and they become the defendant. And no one falls in love in a courtroom. But ownership, that invites connection. That creates safety. When you say, I know I've been distant and I want to work on that, you invite healing. When you say, I've been carrying resentment and I haven't told you why, you create space for understanding. That's intimacy. That's maturity. That's real love. Most couples don't fall apart because of one big betrayal. They fall apart because of 1,000 little blames, never confronted, never owned, just stuffed away. Blame is like mold. It grows in the dark. Ownership shines a light on it. I've heard people say, well, why should I change if they won't? And I always respond, because leadership starts with you. If you want to shift the energy in your relationship, take the first step. Own your part, even if it's just 10%. Own that 10% with everything you've got. Think of it like dancing. If both partners keep stepping on each other's toes, nothing flows. But if one person changes their rhythm, even slightly, the entire dance changes. That's ownership. That's influence. That's power. Your side of the street. And if both people cleaned up their side, imagine how clean the road could be. Let me bring it down to something simple. You come home and your spouse is quiet, withdrawn. Your instinct is to say, what's your problem? Or you're always like this. But ownership says, hey, I noticed something's off. Did I do something to contribute to how you're feeling? That shift, just that one question, changes everything. It disarms. It invites truth. It says, I'm here, I care, let's work this out together. When we focus on blame, we stay stuck. When we focus on ownership, we grow, because it means we're willing to look at our own wounds, our own triggers, our own patterns, and choose something better. It means we stop playing the victim and start becoming the healer. You want a healthy relationship? Then stop keeping score. Stop trying to win the argument. Start asking better questions. Start showing up differently. And most of all, take ownership, not just of your mistakes, but of your healing, your joy, your contribution to the love you want to see. It's not about who's more wrong. It's about who's willing to go first, who's brave enough to lower their guard and say, let's fix this. And I'll start with me, because that's where real change begins, not in changing them, but in transforming you. So maybe, just maybe, it's not that you don't like sleeping with your husband. Maybe you don't like sleeping next to disappointment. You don't like sleeping next to silence. You don't like sleeping next to the version of a man you no longer recognize. And worse, you don't like sleeping next to the version of yourself you've become, because somewhere along the road, life buried your fire, buried your softness, buried the part of you that used to want to be touched, not out of duty, not out of habit, but because connection used to matter, because his hand used to feel like home. And now it feels like a stranger asking for something he hasn't earned. And if we're being honest, and I mean brutally honest, maybe you don't avoid the bed because of him. Maybe you avoid the bed because that's where all the truth lives. That's where your pain waits in the dark. That's where the tears come when no one's looking. That's where you remember that love isn't gone. It's just unspoken, frozen, covered in years of resentment, stress, silence, shame. But listen to me. This is not the end of your story. Not if you don't want it to be. Because relationships don't fail overnight. They fade in the quiet, in the skipped conversations, in the moments we choose avoidance over vulnerability. And that's the good news. That's where the power is. Because if it faded one choice at a time, guess what? It can be rebuilt one choice at a time. You can stop blaming and start owning. You can stop surviving and start rebuilding. You can stop settling for distance and start choosing closeness. Not through massive romantic gestures, but through the everyday kind of courage. The courage to say, I miss us. The courage to ask, can we talk? Not about the kids or the bills, but about us. The courage to take your walls down, even when you're scared they won't. Because the truth is, intimacy is a reflection of the emotional climate in your home. And if your bed feels cold, if your body feels numb, if your heart feels disconnected, it's not because something's broken. It's because something's waiting to be rebuilt. Brick by brick, word by word, touch by touch. You want to feel close again? Then it starts with small acts of ownership. It starts with putting your ego down and picking up curiosity. It starts with talking, not just transferring information, but truly talking. Again, not just about logistics, but about pain, about dreams, about fear, about desire, about what you've both lost and what you still hope to find. Because the problem was never the bed. The bed is just a mirror. It reflects what's going on in the spaces you've stopped tending. It reveals the conversations you haven't had, the forgiveness you haven't given, the love you haven't practiced. So what are you going to do? You've got two choices. You can keep numbing, keep performing, keep living in a house with no soul and sleeping next to a man you no longer know. Or you can fight, not for the fairy tale, but for something better, real connection, real ownership, real love. Not the kind that gets handed to you, the kind you build with your bare hands and an honest heart.